Welcome to Priestessing the Priestesses, episode 17. I am Kohenet Annie Matan, and I'm here with my co-host Kohenet Devorah Gren, and our guest today is Kohenet Batya Minsky Diamond. And it's funny because I was like, wait, what cohort were you in? But it doesn't really matter in the outside world. This is ordained in cohort Zion, and I was there. So, that feels exciting. And Batya is a musician, a chantress, a wise woman, a sacred teacher and elder for me in the community, and so much else. And I'm really excited to hear about her priestessing, and we get to hear her sing today and hear what she's up to. Welcome, Batya.
Thank you. So honored and happy, excited to be here.
We're happy you're able to be here, and I know you've been producing so many wonderful new things since your ordination, so we want to hear about it.
Now, should I start?
Please.
Yeah, please. Jump right in.
I guess I'll start with the latest first, maybe, and work my way back. But I'm just about to launch a new web page associated with my website called Torah Chants. I feel like I finally landed on what to call the work that I'm doing, which are chants based on Torah, not literally the Torah, but all of Jewish teaching, where I take Hebrew verses and add them to music and create chants, but I also weave in English to explain it so they're accessible for people who don't know Torah or don't know Hebrew, and they just want some sort of ancient connection, connection with the real ancient wisdom of Judaism. So that's one of the big projects, and I do I guess it's going to be every other month program of 30 minutes or so of me introducing a chant and having guests introduce chants and doing a teaching or a kavanah, an intention, and then doing the chant and then giving quiet time. And that arose from the pandemic, because what was happening is I found myself attending a lot of Zooms, and they all cried out for you to participate and put something in the chat, and we want volunteers to do this and that. And that doesn't resonate with me quite as much. I mean, I love community. I love small groups where we can really reach each other. But for me, it's so much right now just about going deeper and deeper into the experience of finding the divine, right? Whether it's, deep in my heart or in nature or in the music, that just to really lock in on the love, divine love that's in me and that I see in the world. So for Zoom, I've created an intention that I'm only going to attend Zoom gatherings where I can be fully present, right? So no more multitasking. I'm not going to be checking my emails while I'm on the Zoom, because I want to be fulfilled. I want to be present so that I can offer all of me and that I can receive properly. So that's that piece. So that's one piece of priestessing. Another part for me, going way back, this is for over 22 years, I've been a bar and bat mitzvah instructor and service leader. And so I'm teaching students Hebrew and working with the families privately outside the synagogue setting. That has felt like one of the most rewarding things I've done as a priestess, even before I achieved the title or the ordination. It was sort of I always knew I was a priestess, but it wasn't conferred on me.
Right.
And so doing that work, that has slowed down a little by my choice, because it requires a real commitment to the future. To say, on August 4th of 2022, what's up? And I needed to have a little more spontaneity and a little more space for the music that I'm doing, so that I can offer that in communal or private settings. So that's the sort of the short answer of the main ways in which I priestess.
But can you also talk about your CDs?
Yes, of course. So thank you. So I almost exactly a year ago, on my 60th birthday, I had a big CD release party for a CD of chants, and the title is Infinite Wisdom, Chants of the Divine Feminine. And this grew out of my priestess project. Part of the process of becoming a Kohenet required a project, and I knew it had to be about music and my compositions. I have older CDs that date back to the early 2000s that are mean, they're still lovely, but a little outdated in terms of where I am spiritually. But it's all chance. And I had a big release party and was getting ready to, like, do gigs and to do promotion. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. But it's been wonderful finding other communities where I can share my music with online with the Martha's Vineyard community, with a community in Philadelphia and in California. So it's really been rewarding in a whole different kind of way. So yes, thank you. BatyaDiamond.com. So you can find all the music. You can find the Torah chants. I do custom chants for people.
And can you also say what a Shaviti is, because our audience is certainly not all Jewish, and how you recreated, for me, the concept of a Shaviti and what it could look and really sound like?
Thanks for asking that. I wish I had a sample right here, but many people have seen it's a Jewish visual image, and it's usually words from prayers or from the Torah that are written, let's say, in the shape of a menorah or in the shape of a hamsa, of a hand.
As a very simple one.
Right, the divine name written out. That's beautiful, Deborah.
What is that's gorgeous.
And so the word comes from Shiviti Yudhe Vavhe Lenegdi Tamid. It comes from Psalms. I place the divine name before me always. And so, centuries ago, they took that literally, the divine name, placing it before you, and it became a visual cue for contemplation, for visualization, as a way to meditate on the divine name. And I've taken that idea. The word Shaviti literally means I have placed, but it's the shorthand name of this contemplative device in an image. And I use that for music. I use the idea of the Shaviti as a contemplative sound, music, vibrations that help align us with the divine and open us up to the divine name or whatever else we may be ready to receive.
Wow. I want to hear some.
Yes, let's do that. Of course, now I'm looking everywhere for another Shaviti.
I know.
Oh, well, yes, of course. In a way, this.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So this Shaviti, this chant, is it has 3 words in Hebrew. Hod, which means glory or splendor. Yah, which is one of the divine names. Be'ahava. Be means in or with. Ahava is love. And it goes 2 ways. So the beauty of the divine is love, meaning the divine is revealed to us in love, and also we reveal the divine through our love.
Nice.
Hod ya be'ahava, Hod ya be'ahava, Hod ya be'ahava, be'ahava. Hod ya be'ahava, be'ahava. Shekhinah shines in love. Shekhinah shines in love. Shekhinah shines in love. Shekhinah shines in love. Hod ya
sit in the silence for another minute because we know that's always such a potent piece of the chant. But since we're going to be on air and people may just tune in at that point, I thought I better start talking a little bit. I wanted to bring us back to something we were talking about before we started recording, which was about the elements of ritual, our response to it, both doing it and observing it and being part of it, and the ethics of ritual. And so I just wanted to put that out there and open it up to both of you for anything that you may want to say. If there's anything top of your mind. If not, I can start. Just let me know.
I think it feels important to say, some of how this came up was that we're all pretty experienced at what we do at this point. We've all been priestessing since before we were priestesses, maybe. As Batya said before, we were conferred, a title. And sometimes when we go to experiences that are facilitated by other leaders, it's hard. And sometimes it's hard just because they do it differently than us, and we like it the way we like it. And sometimes it's hard because something is out of alignment. And what came up was sometimes people are not behaving ethically. And when we're not in the leadership role, there's a question that arises about what's our responsibility. And I would say, like, how do we take care of ourselves when we find ourselves in a container that's not well held? And we're participants, not leaders. Then we're participants who happen to have learning and experience and expertise. And I feel like this question is relevant way beyond the question of priestessing, like, what do we do anywhere where we can see that something is out of ethical alignment, and it's not our job to address it? When is it our job? And how do we take care of ourselves in those moments? And what's our responsibility for intervention?
One of the experiences I had recently was I was attending a ritual with a new community, and I didn't feel safe. And it took me a while to realize that. I think at first I was judging the way they were calling on people. I was just judging that. And then allowing people to talk for a very long time when they had a lot of people to get to. And I was judging that, and then I was judging myself for judging that.
Right.
Feeling like, oh, you're a bad person because you're judging that. And I realized then that I had not felt safe in that room. And I won't go back there, but next time, I don't know, maybe I would have signed off. Maybe I just would have turned off my video and said, no, that feels rude. Is it okay to be rude if you're not feeling safe?
If not feeling safe, I think all bets are off. Absolutely. And I think that certainly is the largest, most important point of any ritual. Even though we tend to not try to promise, a safe space, but maybe more a brave space is part of the more recent language. But yet safe is also, people understand that. I was just writing something and I put the word comfortable, and it doesn't really do it. But absolutely, that is like a number one rule. And for me, as I was discussing, another important piece is, what are the ethics of the person running it? And if I mentioned an incident where I saw during a break in the ritual, it was sort of more a workshop, but very ritual based, because you wouldn't normally have an intermission necessarily in a ritual. And it was at that point that we're setting up an altar, and the assistant was doing something that the leader considered wrong and really chided her for it, where other people could hear. But even if public people, hadn't been around, I was so taken aback, because this woman, the leader, had such a reputation I'd been hearing about. I was so looking forward to this workshop. And in that moment, I thought it was all I could do to stay present. And this was in person. This was in the days when we could actually be physically there, a few years ago. And I almost left at that point. But I knew I really needed and wanted to be part of the afternoon activity. Because it was a grief ritual, and my father had died a month or two earlier. And so I made myself stay. But it was difficult because just something shuts down in us, as it did probably for you when you felt, before you even identified not feeling safe, or when you just were critiquing the way it was being held.
I want to say something about the rude thing. Like, especially, this is such a, in many ways, having these things happen in Zoom land is a gift. And one of the ways it's a gift, I was just speaking with a minister here in Toronto, and I'm forgetting her name right now. Barbara, I could look it up. Yeah, it's Barbara, and I forgot her last name. And she was saying one of the things that's been a real blessing in ministering online is that when people don't agree with you, when they feel uncomfortable, they can just leave. And it's not, nobody has to know that they're leaving. There's not like a scene that you stand up and walk out. You just, and you can even, if you want to say, if you want to let anyone know in the chat, you can be like, I have to go, bye. But you don't have to. You can just sign up. Who knows? Maybe your internet cut out. Like, then it's a question of, do you want people to know that you're leaving or not? And if so, why? And I would say if it's a matter of not feeling safe, if there's a facilitator in the room who you trust enough to tell them that's why you're leaving, like if it feels important to do so, you can do that before you go, or you can just follow up with them after. I think our safety, and I'm glad you identified there's a nuanced difference between comfort and safety, Devorah, that you mentioned there. But I think our sense of feeling held and seen and heard, and that somebody's looking out for us, if that's not happening in a ritual space, this is about like priestessing ourselves, like our first responsibility is to ourselves in that moment, is to take care of ourselves. And I'm hoping that the habit of that is showing up for us with the permission of Zoomland will extend when we have in-person gatherings, and people will be able, that voice inside of us will be louder, so that we can say, oh, I'm just gonna go. Like, and we don't have to give an excuse or a reason, and if the facilitator wants to, they can follow up.
Right.
One of the things that came up for me also, just a little nuance here, is what we're talking about, the difference between like judgment, when I was in the moment, I thought that I was being judgmental about what they were doing, right? And I was angry at myself or judging myself for being judgmental. But then when we got down to it, I realized I wasn't feeling safe, right? Yeah. So just to be able to examine what's happening, what's really happening right then.
And do you think you would have responded differently if it was in person? Do you think you might have left? Hard to know.
Very good question.
Yeah.
I might have rolled my eyes or.
But you know what? I think in person, like when we're in the room and we can transmit information with our body language, you can raise your hand and say, can I just, how are we picking people? Whatever the thing is that's happening, sometimes those things are harder to address on Zoom because there can only be one speaker. There can only be one voice. There can only be, and in some cases, I was facilitating a ritual where I was intentionally spotlighting the person who was speaking. We've been to others like that. So you can only see one face at a time. You miss all of that nuance. So there are other avenues to have those needs addressed when we're in a room in person that are harder to access on Zoom. It might not have gotten to that point, I guess. Mind you were still at the eye rolling, not at the realizing the issue with safety.
That's right.
And actually, and I want to say, like we were talking about this before, and the language that you used was this Kabbalistic language of like that when you noticed your judgment, that tweaked you, or I forget what word you used, but like reminded you to bring more love, that your intention is more love. And so you noticed the judgment and you brought chesed. And I love, and I was like, oh, well, you thought you were in Gevurah judgment, but maybe what was happening was it was Gevurah boundaries, that your boundaries had been transgressed. And that more love, you were bringing compassion to the facilitators, which is where we started in our conversation offline, was like, oh, have compassion for new facilitators. And actually, when you allowed yourself to get to the point of recognizing it was about safety, you had turned that chesed towards yourself.
Right. And for people who want to know more about these terms that we're using, like Chesed, loving kindness, and Gevurah, judgment or boundaries or strength, these are Sefi wrote on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, and you can look that up with, as somebody said the other day, Reb Google.
Yes, Google, yeah.
Rabbi Google, or somewhere else, but you can look and see these are 10 or sometimes more, depending how you count, divine and human attributes that are represented as spheres, circles on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. Yeah, and very useful as a blueprint for living and as a mind and body and spirit map, really. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to come back to part of that question about like, how do we, I don't really have a good answer. I want to say, I feel like it's a good question for our time of what is our responsibility when we see something happening, when we think something is happening that is either unethical or we feel unsafe, or just like, you know, it can be, sometimes it's, I think, untrained or it's not fair to say, but like less experienced facilitation that isn't doing as good, like a good job of minding the holes, minding the gaps in the container. And so there's such a spectrum. We don't know what the intention is. We don't know, is the person having an off day? And I feel like it depends, you know, first we need to tend to our nervous system and then see if we feel like we can come back and say, hey, something happened and I want to talk about it.
It also, of course, depends on the relationship, if you have one with the person, right? How well you know them, or if not at all. Yeah, no, it can be very touchy. I mean, there are very few times, unless something was really bad, drastic happening, that you would interrupt a ritual in the middle. I was once in a circle in a classroom where somebody just kind of broke down during the ritual. And so we did have to stop everything, focus on that person, and do a cooling ritual within the main ritual, you know, which somebody was very skilled at, who was one of the leaders, and immediately had other students, you know, put together a bowl of water and flowers and different things that we had immediate access to. And it was beautiful. It turned out to be a beautiful teaching moment as well. You know, everybody at that ritual, I'm sure, learned something about how to handle something that just was like an explosion in the middle of a peaceful scenario, and where everybody was having the intention of healing and bringing love to this person. Yeah, but it's very tricky what you're raising. Yeah, and I think it's very important to address in some way, whether you know the leader or not, afterwards, to let them know if they, especially if they did something unethical or really inappropriate. And you know, hopefully if you have a relationship with that person, it doesn't end the relationship, but if it's real, it won't. And if they don't know you, they may just ignore your advice. I don't think they would ignore, any smart person would not ignore your impressions, because that is a witnessing of their behavior. And if they're really doing the job right, so to speak, I mean, if they're really trying to be a sincere, authentic priestess or leader, who wants everybody's and the, you know, everyone's highest good, then they will be, I think, receptive. But of course, our egos get in the way too. But yeah, hopefully it'll be receptive.
I feel like it might be helpful because we're talking about some like hypothetical them, and here we all lead ritual, we all facilitate. So it might be helpful for us to sort of flip the script and say like, well, how do we handle it when we screw up? Mm-hmm. And what would we want our participants to do if they didn't feel safe? If they didn't feel held? And I'll say it's come up for me a couple of times, even last night, because your example was, there was something about the way people were being called on, Batya, and I was like, yeah, last night I was facilitating a ritual and I did not like the way I was calling on people. And there was a technology issue. There were just so many people. There wasn't a good order. In a small group, I'll be like, okay, we'll do it alphabetically, or I'll tell you in advance, this is the order I'm gonna go in. But it was such a big group, and sometimes people move, you know, so like I have an order, I know it's not the same order anyone else has. And I was just aware of the lack of accessibility and the potential for discomfort in that. And we were tight for time, or I would have let them do it. Usually I would have just let people self-select. And so like we're learning, you know, like there's so much learning and wrestling. And then I'm grateful that I have someone who comes to my circles regularly who has stopped me and said, I don't understand, like there was a prompt and I got, so into explaining, or, it could be this or it could be this. And she was like, what are you asking? And it was hard for her. Like she felt not safe because she didn't want to get it wrong. And I'm so grateful to her for her trust in me, that she got emotional and said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. And it was really helpful for me to notice that pattern that I have of not giving a clear, like not coming, concise and clear prompt so that everyone knows what's coming next. So, I mean, I'm grateful that is a trusting relationship both ways. Like we're both the sources, we know each other well. And that love that you were talking about, Batya, like I'm practicing not beating myself up about it when I screw up and saying, this was good in so many ways and I'm learning. And I'm grateful for that learning.
Yeah, you're really pointing also to the need, I think, to have somebody who is working with us, whether it's an assistant or somebody to mirror us and to witness and to be able to interrupt and send us a chat about the order of things or any one of a number of things that can come up. I think that's a real reason to always have somebody like that in hand. Batya?
I think something else, especially if we've been priesting for a while, sometimes I know I've felt like, oh, I've done that 100 times, I could just do that. But it really requires focused preparation and just to know what steps you're taking, because it's a responsibility.
Right. And things we've done 100 times, we sometimes, as I do anyway, assume that people know what to do. Or if I'm telling a story of certain myth that I do tell a lot about Lilith, for example, I often tend to jump to the middle almost, or jump from the beginning too quickly because I know it so well. And that would also lead to what Annie's talking about, that sort of confusion if I then gave an assignment or a writing prompt, from that, not assignment, but,
Well, you're a teacher, you do give assignments.
Yeah, but hopefully not in my rituals. But I'm just noticing the time and want to be mindful of everyone's time. And I'm just wondering if, I want to open it to anything else you want to say, but I would like to maybe close with another chant if Batya is willing to do that.
And before you close, Batya, can you tell us about any upcoming offerings or ways that people can access your work?
Thank you. At that previously mentioned website, Batya, Batya diamond.com, on January 31st, on that Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, it's going to be 1 hour of that Torah Chants program. This is my second episode. And lucky for me, Devorah has agreed to be one of my guests introducing one of the chants. I think we'll save the content as a surprise,
Okay.
but I'm working on putting that program together now, and you can go to my website and you can click through to register for that program. Thank you very much.
And it's a lovely website with a lot of sampling of your work available, right, as well?
Lots of music, many years of music, and some videos, put lyric videos, which I find are helpful too for people who, need different ways of accessing the information.
Yeah. Annie, did you want to add anything else?
I guess I wonder if you can tell us even briefly, like one practice that you have, Batya, for priestessing yourself, for how do you priestess yourself in general or at this time?
Of course, I'd skip over the self-care part. It's always the hardest to remember for me. So sorry. Yes, indeed.
Like what I love to do on Shabbat evening, especially, but I Kabbalat Shabbat Friday night, but other times as well, is I light candles as I'm getting into the bath. And then I sit and soak in the bath and sing and just wait to sort of receive guidance from Shekhinah or from my ancestors, and trusting their wisdom, and then just seeing what comes up. And it's usually in the form of a song or a chant or a few words that I need to hear in that moment.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, Annie, you're cutting out. Can you say it again? You cut out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. said, wow, I want to do that. You know, bathtubs have the best acoustics. Why haven't I thought of this? I listen to music. I bring my speaker and I play music when I'm in the bath. I'm like, oh my gosh, chanting in the bath. What a wonderful vibrational idea.
And bring your voice memos so you can record.
Right, right.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Oh, it's Shabbos. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, so you'll sing for us. And I mute myself. Deborah, I encourage you, if we mute ourselves, we can sing along.
Beautiful.
So that's what I like to do. And I'm singing over here in harmony, imagining you can feel it.
We'll come back to close. Okay.
Yeah.
So this has 4 words: kumi, get up; tsei, get out; mitoch, from amidst; hahafecha, the upside downness. It's from Lecha Dodi, which is a Friday night prayer. And here we go. צאי מתוך ההפכה, קומי צאי, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, קומי צאי, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, קומי צאי, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, קומי צאי.
Such a beautiful entry into Shabbat and such a beautiful invitation to Shekhinah. Thank you, Batya.
Sounds even better on the recording because the producer is a genius and there's like the strings and the it's
Oh,
thank you.
it's gorgeous. Thank you so much for bringing your voice and your guitar playing. And we know Zoom can't do you justice, but we felt your vibrations of your work and this conversation. Thank you for bringing us this conversation. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me. I so love both of you and all of the good work and support that you offer. Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks, Batya. Many blessings on both of
many
you.
blessings. A good Sabbath and a good weekend. Any other closing words before we sign off? No? All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care, everyone.